I'm continuing my series on breeding boas. You know what I noticed? I seem to be scratching myself a lot, which I noticed on my videos. And I also noticed that these videos all make me look bald. So I'm not sure what to do about that. I asked my daughters; they have no suggestions. So I guess we're just gonna have to live with that. I'm gonna scratch myself a lot, and I'm bald. Oh well. So I think the itching is from I've been supplementing some vitamin B1. I'm doing a bit of an experiment to see if it'll help me with some issues. I got a little bit of an essential tremor in my hand sometimes when I put my hand in exactly the right position, at the right time of day. I get a little shake out of it. And I don't like that, not one bit. All the working out that I've done hasn't taken that away. It's a little weird. But so, at any rate, this is about boa breeding and a continuation of my series. So today, I thought that regardless, a side effect of vitamin B1 supplementation can be itchiness. So I ended up with a really bad itch on the back of my hand last night. Scratched it nearly raw. Did it on my leg the other night, like I had poison oak or something, but I didn't. Um, so at any rate, uh, never mind. So I thought the next thing that I should show, you kind of take, I kind of take all these things for granted. You know, I just assume everybody knows how to do this, that, and the other thing because I've been doing it forever and ever, and I don't know if people know all of these things. So some of this is going to be maybe really basic for some people, and some of it might be informative for other people. So today I'm going to go over removing the male from the female and how I do it. Of course, this is the only way it can be done. If you don't do it this way, you're a moron and you're doing it the absolute wrong way. Not really. So you can do it any way you want to. You know, a lot of people keep their males in with females until the breeding season is over, which is what I used to do years ago. And I got tired of losing males through the breeding season. I would also lose some females who didn't go back on feed after having had a male in with them for 4 or 5 months, which is a really long period of time. And if you think about it, in the wild, if something comes by, they have an opportunity to eat. If they're hungry, what do they do? Well, they snag it and they eat it. There's the answer. So I'm trying to repeat as best as I can. I'm trying to duplicate some of what happens in the wild. So they're not on a 3-week schedule in the wild, obviously, but they are on roughly a 3-week schedule in my facility. So I put the males in with the females initially, and then I wait about 3 weeks before I remove the male from all of the cages so that I can feed everybody. So I feed the males and the females. If you left some of the males in and only fed some of the animals, you're running the risk that the male will mistaken the female's movement for a food item because the whole place will smell to them like food if you come in here with rats. Or vice versa. Female will grab the male. So I don't like that. I don't want that to happen. So I always remove the males from the females, which just seems to be common sense. I do everybody all at once. So this afternoon I'll be removing all of my males. And sometimes I'll run into something where I can't remove the male because they happen to be hooked up, which is relatively rare that animals are actually hooked up. So contrary to what many people seem to believe, if they have tail alignment and it looks like they might be hooked up, most of the time they're not hooked up. So I hear people say, "Oh, they're locked." Well, no, they're probably not locked. I don't concern myself with whether or not they're actually copulating, because if I know it or not, it doesn't have any impact on whether I'm going to get a good litter or not. So I don't need to know it. It's enough to know that they might be for me. And I remember it. So as I go along checking, a lot of animals, I'll know who has been courting, who hasn't been courting, who has courted some this year, who hasn't courted at all that I've observed. And I'm checking them 4 or 5 times a day. I'm here all day, every day. I'm doing lots of things, but I check on them this time of year. I'm checking on them a lot. So the process that I use when I separate them, that's what I'm going to try to put together or show you, rather than just barking it at you. I'm a firm believer in teaching by showing as much as possible. Some things are best spoken, while many things are more valuable if you can actually see how someone does something. So we're going to do a lot of that today, and I'm hoping I can get my tripod that I've got my phone on right now recording set up in a good spot so that I can basically show you what I do and how I get the mail out, which is just kind of common sense, but it's the way that I do it. And if you haven't done it before, maybe you don't know how to do it. Maybe you're interested in finding out how I do it. Maybe you're interested in watching me do it. Maybe you're curious to find out if I'm bald when I'm doing it, just like I am right now. But I can assure you I will be. And I almost said it at any rate again. So pretend like I said it, even though I didn't. So for you who are counting at home. So I'm going to show you how I get the males out. And invariably, this is something that happens, that I'll show a little video clip of quite a few of the animals where the male is trying to court or potentially breeding the female that I just shot. And this invariably happens. You figure out which males you're going to put in with which females. You put all your males in. For me, it took over a week to figure out which males I was putting in with which females. I can still do some moving around if I need to, but mostly I'm set on who's going to be breeding with who. And 3 weeks from when I put the last ones in is where I am right now. So that's when I'm going to get all the males out. I'm going to lay out my rats tonight. I'm going to feed everybody tomorrow, so today is Tuesday. So I'm going to feed everybody tomorrow, which is Wednesday. And then I'm going to put all the males back in on Friday. So I always wait about 2 days because the smell of rodents is fresh. Invariably, if I walk through here, if I feed tomorrow, which I will, when I feed tomorrow, every time I walk through here, after I feed in the morning, I'll be done by 10 o'clock. Doesn't take very long. Every time I walk through the rest of the day tomorrow, there'll be some animals that bang on the door because they think it's another rat. It is, but it's not the rats that they eat. It's a big rat, me. So same thing with Thursday. It's so fresh, the smell is so overpowering that I have found, my experience is, I don't put the males in for 2 days after I've taken them out to feed. And I'm feeding everybody, males and females. So everybody is going to have had a rat in their mouth or a mouse, depending on, a lot of my males are just getting adult mice. Everybody will have had a rat, been wrapped around it. So they obviously, part of them smells like rat because they wrapped around a rat. And I want that smell to dissipate a little bit. 2 days worth. before I put the males back in. Then it's time to put the males back in. And when I'm doing that, I'm very careful to make sure that the female knows it's not a rat coming in today. It's your boyfriend, the boy that's supposed to be your boyfriend. If you would try to act, a little bit romantic, maybe he will try to breed now. And of course, if he climbs on and the tails are aligned, that means they're locked. No. Usually they don't lock until after the male is courted for typically at least 6 weeks. So sometimes it'll be faster than that, but the typical time is about 6 weeks. Then there'll be courtship, lots and lots of courtship. The actual copulation or the legit lock only happens the last week to 10 days, which is my opinion. You're entitled to a different opinion if you want to. That's okay. But my opinion is locks don't happen until the last week to 10 days, generally speaking. Most of the time, boas are not like a lot of other species. Boas aren't breeding for fun. They're breeding because it's an instinctive thing. And breeding does not occur until all parties are ready for a viable breeding. So breeding early on is probably a waste, so it doesn't happen. Female has to be receptive to the male. Female has to raise her tail and open her cloaca to let him insert so that they can actually copulate. And that doesn't happen until after the male has stimulated the female and she has developed egg follicles that are of significant enough size so that she's near or very near to ovulating when she'll breed, and then she'll store that sperm, which I think they can only store for maybe up to about 2 months. So I have had animals get together, seen the breeding, or seen what I thought was breeding, and then waited for an ovulation, and then it didn't happen. So usually the ovulation is going to happen within 2 weeks of when the breeding ensues. But I've had probably 10 times over the years where a female has not ovulated until more like 6 weeks or even up to 2 months after the male had been taken out of the cage. So in that case, there would have had to have been sperm stored, or I guess potentially the ova could have been fertilized, and I didn't see an ovulation later on, but there was no growth within the ova. I mean, that sounds crazy. It probably is. But they just sat there in a suspended animation state until the female would actually officially ovulate. I'm not making a claim because I don't know precisely how this goes. We don't. A lot of this is just conjecture and our best estimate, best guess, which is all I'm doing here is I'm just guessing. I'm winging it, which I've been doing for 40 years. So works out. So let's get to putting some or taking some males out of cages, and I'll show you how to do that. I do use a snake hook for that, but only to touch the animals. Sometimes I'll use it to get the male out or get him near the door so I can get him out, because my males oftentimes are very, very small and the hook won't hurt them. It hurts big females and it hurts large males, but most of my males are very small. So I'll use the hook because it makes it easier for me to reach the animal, especially up on the shelf or when they're way in the back. Like on these cages, which are 30 inches deep, it's a long way to reach. So it's easier to get it with the hook, especially if the female has got her head, like this one. You can't see her, but she's peering right over the shelf. So if the female is in a position where I feel like I'm in danger of being bit, regardless of how her reaction has been to being touched with the hook. If I feel like I'm not going to do anything until I feel like it's very unlikely that she's going to strike. But I'm still not going to put myself in a position where I'm within striking distance because I don't want to get bit. And I've never been bit on the head so far. It's a huge target, believe me, a huge head. But I've never been bit on the head. I've been punched in the mouth by a Bolivian boa once, which struck out of the cage. Was the nastiest, probably the second nastiest boa I ever owned. Her brother was the nastiest. And she struck out, and I saw it. It was like slow motion. She struck out, and her mouth came clapping shut, made a noise, clapping shut just before she hit me in the mouth, and she actually bloodied my lip. Boom. Not with her teeth, just with her head. So I always say that she punched me in the mouth. So basically, she head-butted me. So I didn't get it on video. That would have been entertaining, wouldn't it? So at any rate, let's get this camera set up, and I'll show you how I pull a few of the males out of the cages. I won't do too many, but I'll show you how I get the males out of the cages. It'll be a little bit cumbersome the way I have to set up the camera, and might not be ideal because I don't have anybody to hold the camera for me. I just have to set it on a tripod, and then I'm going to reach in and do my thing. And I'll be talking while I do it, because why not, right? Okay, let's go. Let's get some males out. All right, so this isn't going to be the greatest video because I can't get my tripod to extend up high enough to look into the cage. But there's a nice female right on the other side of this lip. And there's a male courting her right now. She's a female paradise, a monster tail paradise, and I have a sharp IMG breeding her, and I'm touching them with the hook. You have to trust me on that. So here she is. She's going to come up and take a peek. Hey, she says, "Hey, what's the big idea?" All right, so touch her enough that I feel like she's not going to do anything. He is ignoring me. So his tail is not aligned with her right now, so that's an easy one. Just grab him. I do everything kind of in slow motion when I'm doing this. I don't do anything herky-jerky. I don't want them to be startled by anything that I'm doing. So I get him out. A sharp IMG. Probably can't see him very well. We get him out. Put him in the drawer down below. Now you probably can't even see me, but you can hear me babbling. All right, so that stack, that's the only male in that stack. There's two Peruvians here. They don't have anybody in with them. And I've got another one up in the top here. Move the camera. And another male up here. It's going to get better. Trust me, it's going to be more interesting. So the one after this is a pair of Peruvians. So I've got to get actually a pair of Het Bacano Peruvian red tails. So this is a motley prodigy, and she is feisty isn't the word. She's just hungry all the time. So I'm touching her a little bit. The male in the back here is under the aspen. So like I described, it's a long ways back. So I'm going to use the hook to get a hold of him. He's not trying to breed, but he doesn't want to come out. So there's a male. IMG. Got him out. I always like to close the door right away. and latch it, both latches, because I've left one latch unlatched before, or I've actually closed the door and forgotten to latch either latch. That's less than ideal. That's not how you want to do it. So now he's out. He's in a drawer. Now we're going to do one you're going to be able to see, and this will be a little bit more of a hairy situation. Let's see how this works out. All right, so I'm going to turn the camera around. Turn on my light. Let's see. There we go. I do know how to work it. Let's see, how am I going to do this so you can see? So I have to move the camera over here. Tilt this down a little bit. I have the tripod adjusted all the way down. So here is unlatching the door. I'm not going to be able to watch the screen on this one because I have the light on. And there's a Peruvian red tail. Just spot cleaned everything, filled the water. She spilled a little water, so it's a little bit wet. It's about an 8-foot female Peruvian. I'm just going to let her know that I am not something to eat, so I just touch her on the head. And typically, your males are typically very kind of oblivious to what's going on because they're busy doing something else, right? So the male is back there. So I can just reach in and do my thing with the male. And I gently I'm touching him to make sure he's not hooked up. He's lined up. And I touch him right down near the cloaca where she is, just to make sure that he's not actually hooked up. Which I've never had a negative response to. So he's not hooked up. I have him. It's about as big as I would ever get a male. And she is coming out. So I'm going to put him in his tub. He has no idea he's going to eat tomorrow. And neither does she. So she wants to get wrapped around my ladder. So that's typically how I handle animals. I handle them in slow motion. I let them do their crawling. I don't manhandle them. So there's another one. That's pretty exciting, huh? Let's see if I can find another one. Oh, this one should be fun. You see that? You see why this one's going to be fun? So I don't have very many instances where I've got this scenario. So I've got to get these two females separated. Two big females in here. And there's one male. So he's got the option of breeding one female or the other, or both, one at a time. And I've got to get one female over to the other cage, and I've got to get the male out. All without anybody biting one another or biting me. And she's a little bit curious. The male is on top, courting the one on top. And here's this one. She's just looking around like, hey, what's going on? So I have the option. That's the one above, just nailed the door. So I have the option of scooting her through the hole or pulling her out and putting her in here. So it's easier just to bring her around. So I think that's what I'll do. The male is on top, trying to breed the other female. So I'm going to close off that door. And now I'm going to get this female out. This is typically how I do it, because I try to handle them as little as possible. So I get her started on the other side. This one is definitely developing egg follicles. She's quite chunky. He's been courting both of them on and off, which is a nice plan. So she goes over here. There's a full, fresh bowl of water over here as well. And lock her up. Now the male is up there. Female's looking around like, hey, what's going on? I touch her a little bit. And he's not going to be doing much of anything. And now I'm going by feel. So I'm feeling him. And I've had many, many times I've been doing this, and then I feel male, I can touch the hemipene where he's got it in the female. Then I just leave him. And I've never had him get real upset about it, which is interesting. So, I'm not trying to be a perv or anything. I'm just trying to make sure I don't try and pull them apart if they're connected. So now he's a little upset. Not upset to strike at me, just trying to get away. I'm going to put him in his drawer. Alright, there's another one. Still want to get some video where you can see this a little bit better. These bottom cages aren't ideal for being able to see me actually handle the animal to get him out of there. So let's try another cage down here. Here's one. This is going to be good. All right. So this is a sharp sun glow, and well, it's not as good as I'd hoped. Would have been better if he would have been lined up where it looked like he might be hooked up, and he's not. So at any rate, we'll still get him out. Same routine. Touch the female a little bit. They're generally, I don't know, I would call it kind of submissive when I get to this point, because they're not smelling any food. I'm sure that they understand or they recognize my smell. And it's time to just get the male out. She doesn't know that, but she knows that I mean her no harm, because I'm the guy who regularly gets into her cage. And I get the male out. Pretty snazzy, huh? So I think I'm going to look and see if I can find where it looks like I've got a pair that might be hooked up. If we're lucky, we'll be able to find a pair that are actually hooked. And you'll get a better view kind of how I do that, where I reach in and feel them and make sure that I'm not abruptly causing a disruption. So let's see. Nope. I'm going to pause this and I'm going to walk around and see if I can find a pair like that. Alright, well here I've got a pair. Looks like they might be hooked up. I saw him doing a little twitching. kind of indicative of being hooked up. Maybe, maybe not. This is a Hypo Labby Het Sharp female, and she has a Key West Het Sharp trying to breed. And I'm going to show you how I gently maneuver around this. In case they actually are hooked up. Alright. Forgot my hook. Alright, so I got the hook. Now the first thing I want to do, usually the male isn't on the prowl for something to eat, the female will be. So I'm going to touch her enough so that she knows it's not something to eat. Alright, and I typically know by their body language, so she's backing off. Now, she's coming back. They never seem to be thrilled about being messed with when they're possibly breeding. I don't know why. Alright, so I'll get a hold of him like this here and touch him. And see? Locked, right? Nope, they weren't even connected. But he was in line. He could have been. It was close. So I touched him enough to get him to move forward to confirm that he wasn't actually hooked up. They don't want to injure them, which is what can happen if they are hooked up and you try to pull them out. And I saw another one up here that was courting. Oh, he's not. He's nowhere near being hooked up. But anyways, I think you get a general idea how I do this. Again, the first thing I want to do is let the female know that I'm not something to eat or a threat. So I touch the female a little bit. There's a female call Sunglow Jungle, and the male is a Hypo Labyrinth IMG Het Call. And this is kind of a typical position where you have the male will have his head on the female. And again, I'll touch him gently. If he was lined up, I'd take a little bit longer to make sure he isn't hooked up. And I get him and I take him out. Slowly, no mad rush. So that gives you a basic idea how I do this. Didn't know I had my flashlight in my mouth, did you? So I do it with my flashlight oftentimes in my mouth to light the way so I can see what I'm doing. And get the male out, put the male in the tub, and I do that quite a few times on a day like today because I've got to get the males out. It takes me a few hours to get all the males out, get them put into tubs so that I can spread out rats for feeding tomorrow. Check out that little guy. This is definitely fully adult, about 18, 19 months old. Hypo Labby IMG Het Call. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed doing it. At any rate, we'll catch you on the next video. All right? Have a good one.